Do you know the feeling of having your electronic signature forged on a DocuSign, transferring the $10 million house you spent a decade designing, right before seeing your husband's wedding announcement on Vogue? Not the real Vogue. His mistress's fake Instagram, designed to look just like it. That's when I knew. I was not just being betrayed. I was being erased. My name is Eliza Vance. I am 34 years old, and the email that officially ended my life arrived at 2:15 in the afternoon. It wasn't flagged as important. Just a standard automated confirmation from DocuSign. Your document has been finalized. I was still in a plush robe at a high-end spa in Aspen, the air smelling of eucalyptus, sipping lukewarm tea I did not want. I almost deleted it. Then I saw the subject line, Quitclaim Deed, 1284 Mountain Crest. My pulse did not just quicken, it stopped. 1284 Mountain Crest, my home. The $10 million glass and steel masterpiece I had designed from the ground up, the one overlooking all of Denver, our home. I clicked the PDF. It was a complete, final, and legally binding transfer of ownership, a full surrender of all my rights to the property. And there, at the bottom, was my signature, my perfect, clean, digital signature. It was impossible. I frantically scrolled, clicking into the document's certificate of authenticity. The IP address timestamp showed it was signed yesterday at precisely 4:30 p.m. It was signed from my own iPhone. Yesterday. I was here, in this spa. My husband, Julian Thorne, had insisted on it. You are burning out, Eli, he had said, kissing my forehead. A complete digital detox, a surprise gift. Just 48 hours. No arguments. My hands started shaking, rattling the teacup against the ceramic saucer. I slammed it down. I tried to think logically. I am a tech architect. I design user experiences. I understand digital security. This had to be a sophisticated hack. I pulled up my browser and tried to log into our joint banking system, the one that held the liquidity from our last big sale. Invalid login or password? My throat tightened. Okay. I whispered to the empty, steam-filled lounge. I backed out, tried the password reset. Security questions not recognized. Such a small, cold phrase. I called Julian. It rang twice and went straight to his voicemail. Hey, it's Julian. Leave a message. His voice was bright, casual, recorded months ago when we were still us. Julian, call me back right now. Something is seriously wrong with the house, with the accounts. I think we are being hacked. Call me. I hung up and sent an iMessage. Julian, this is urgent. Pick up. The bubble turned blue. It delivered. A few seconds later, the tiny gray text appeared beneath it. Read. I stared at the screen. Silence. No typing icon. No response. The blood drained from my face, leaving my skin cold and clammy under the robe. He was reading my messages and deliberately ignoring them. This was not a hack. This was a plan. My mind raced. Why, how I opened Instagram, needing a distraction, needing anything familiar. And that is when I found it. It was a new account, tagged in one of his business partner's photos. A sleek, professional-looking page. Vogue Weddings. It looked legitimate. The font was right, the layout pristine. The top post, from an hour ago, was a glowing, sun-drenched photo of Julian. He was standing on my terrace, the Denver skyline behind him. He was with a woman I did not know, Serafina Hayes. The caption announced their beautiful whirlwind romance and their intimate upcoming ceremony. The location, 1284 Mountain Crest. The time tomorrow. I stopped breathing. The spa, the DocuSign, the bank account. It all clicked into place with the sickening finality of a deadbolt sliding shut. I threw the robe off, tore the spa slippers from my feet, and ran to the valet, barefoot on the hot asphalt. The drive from Aspen to Denver is over 3 hours. I think I made it in 2. My phone kept buzzing alerts from the bank, from the credit card companies. Access denied, account frozen. When I screeched to a halt in front of my own gate, the car smelling of burning brakes, my custom entry code flashed red. Access denied. I tried the override. Denied. I slammed my hand on the horn. A long, desperate sound. That is when two men in dark suits stepped out from the security booth. Not our usual guy. These were new, built like linebackers. "Ma'am, you need to step away from the gate," one said, his hand resting on something bulky at his hip. "That is my house," I screamed, my voice cracking. "My name is Eliza Vance. Open this gate." The second man stepped forward, refusing to meet my eyes. He held out a folded piece of paper. "Mr. Thorne has filed this," he said, his voice flat. It was a temporary restraining order, signed by Julian. It accused me of erratic behavior and mental instability. It legally barred me from coming within 500 feet of the property. I looked from the paper to the house on the hill. My house. The one where he was currently preparing to marry someone else. The spa was not a gift. It was a holding cell. It was not an alibi for me. It was an alibi for him. It was the perfect way to get me out of the picture while he executed the digital theft of my entire life. I drove with no destination. Just a raw, animal instinct to flee. The restraining order felt like a physical weight in the passenger seat. I had no money, no credit cards, no home. My car was a lease, probably next on his list to be remotely disabled. I had 1 tank of gas and 1 place left to go. The drive to my childhood home was mechanical. I parked in the same gravel driveway I had learned to drive on, next to my mother's sensible 10-year-old sedan. The house was a simple, solid brick colonial. It was a house built on pragmatism, not dreams. I used my old key. It still worked. Margaret was in the kitchen, reading a physical newspaper, a porcelain teacup steaming beside her. She looked up as I burst through the door, my face a mess of tears and road dust. She did not stand. She did not look surprised. She simply raised an eyebrow. The dam of adrenaline that had gotten me this far broke. I collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing, the words tumbling out in a gasping, incoherent rush. He took it. Mom. He took the house, the DocuSign. He forged my name. I was choking on the words. He's marrying her. Some woman. He's marrying her at the house. Tomorrow. He locked me out. He filed a restraining order. I finally sucked in a breath and waited for the explosion, for the horror, the anger, the maternal rage. I waited for her to rush to me, to hold me, to say, "We will destroy him." Margaret did none of those things. She very calmly folded the newspaper, placed it neatly on the table, and reached for the teapot. She poured a second cup. "Eliza," she said, her voice perfectly even, "you have always built your life on emotion, not on contracts. You were too trusting." I stared at her, the sound of the hot tea hitting the cup, the only noise in the room. It was a splash of scalding water on my already raw nerves. It felt like a second betrayal, sharper and more intimate than the first. "Don't you even care?" My voice was a shredded whisper. "Did you hear what I said? I've lost everything. The house, the money, my life. It's all gone." Margaret finally looked at me, her eyes as clear and cold as the gray sky outside. "I care about the outcome, Eliza. I always have. Are you going to stand there and weep about the life you lost? Or are you going to focus and take back what is yours?" Her coldness was brutal. It was also exactly what I needed. It was a slap that stopped the hysteria. The panic that was making my vision swim receded, and in its place, something new clicked into focus, a quiet, precise, and icy rage. "Fine," I said, wiping my face with the back of my hand. I walked to the kitchen table, sat down opposite her, and pulled out my laptop. I need a lawyer. I called my personal attorney, a woman I had used for small contracts years ago, before Julian had folded all my business into his own legal team. I explained the situation in the same clipped, emotionless tone my mother had used with me. The lawyer was sympathetic and useless. "Eliza, I am looking at the public filing," she said, her voice tinny over the speakerphone. "The quitclaim deed is ironclad. It has a verified DocuSign certificate. The IP address is registered to your personal device. To fight this, we would have to prove sophisticated identity theft, that he had access to your phone, that you were under duress. That takes months. We do not have 24 hours. "He sent me to a spa," I said, the realization landing in my stomach like a block of ice. A digital detox. He must have installed spyware on my phone while I was getting a massage. "That is exactly what a judge will want proof of," she said. "But right now, legally, that house is his. And with this restraining order, Eliza, stay away. Do not go near him. We will file on Monday, but you need to prepare for a long fight." I hung up. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. I looked at the floral wallpaper, the same wallpaper that had been there for 30 years. I was trapped. He had won. He had thought of everything. "So that's it," I said to the room. "He wins. He gets the $10 million house. He gets the money. And he gets the wedding." I looked at my mother, who was sipping her tea as if we were discussing the weather. "You won't help me." Margaret placed her cup down. For the first time, a small, unreadable smile touched the corners of her mouth. It was not a smile of warmth. It was a smile of calculation. "Oh, I'll help. Eliza," she said, standing up and walking to the old-fashioned desk in the corner. "He is an amateur, and he made a mess." She looked back at me, that strange smile still in her eyes. "You will get your house back, and trust me, you will want a front-row seat." Julian made a mistake. It was a fatal, arrogant, and utterly predictable mistake. He underestimated me. He thought the house was his because he changed the password on the tablet in the kitchen. He thought he was a tech genius because he locked me out of the front-end user interface, the simple, pretty skin I designed to make him feel in control. He forgot who I am. I did not just live in that house. I built its nervous system. I wrote the code. From the quiet of my mother's kitchen, on a laptop that was ancient by my standards, I bypassed his superficial little blockade. I opened a secure shell, a simple black window with a blinking green cursor. I typed in the root admin credentials, a 64-character key I had hard-coded into the central server's firmware 2 years ago, long before Serafina was a name I knew. My screen flickered and then populated. I was not just in, I was everywhere. I had access to every camera, every microphone, every smart lock, every light switch, and the entire HVAC system. I was a digital ghost, haunting the home he had stolen from me. I pulled up the camera feed for the great room, and there they were. Julian and Serafina. They were on my custom-designed sofa, drinking champagne from my wedding crystal. Caterers I did not recognize bustled in the background, hanging flowers. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her hand resting on his thigh. He leaned in and kissed her. It was a lazy, familiar kiss, a kiss of ownership. My stomach heaved, but the icy rage my mother had sparked held firm. This was not a time for emotion. This was a time for data collection. I saw Julian get up, pat her on the leg, and walk toward his study. My study. I clicked the audio feed. The microphone in that room was studio grade, part of the integrated conference system I had installed for his important calls. I could hear the brush of his suit jacket as he sat down. I heard Serafina follow him in. "Are you sure you handled her?" Serafina's voice was higher than I expected, a little reedy. "She is not just going to show up, is she?" "Baby, I told you." Julian's voice was a deep, reassuring purr, the same purr he had used on me 1,000 times. "It is handled. She is legally gone. The papers are filed. The restraining order is active. Eliza is not going to dare make a scene. She is too proud. She will go crawl back to her mother, and by the time she gets a lawyer, we will be on a beach in the Maldives." Serafina laughed. "I cannot wait. Now, I have to go check on the floral arch." I heard the door click shut. I was about to move on, to start digging into his files, when I heard Julian pick up the phone again. The dial tone. He was calling someone else. "David," he said. "His lawyer. Yeah, it's done. Flawlessly. The spa trip worked perfectly." He laughed. It was a sound I had once loved. Now it sounded like breaking glass. "No, zero risk," he continued. "Her own mother confirmed the schedule for me. Margaret wanted Eliza out of the picture as much as we did. She said Eliza was too emotional about the assets. She was in—" The laptop almost slipped from my grasp. My mother. It was not cold comfort. It was not tough love. It was complicity. Margaret had not just been cold. She had actively helped him. She had confirmed I would be at the spa, vulnerable, my phone unattended. She had held the door open for him. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, it almost broke me. Almost. The rage did not just freeze me, it forged me. I was truly alone now, and I had nothing left to lose. Julian was still talking, and he was getting sloppy. "The new investors are wired in," he boasted to his lawyer. "Thorn Catalyst Group's second round is officially oversubscribed. They have no idea the seed assets are the same ones I leveraged for the last round. By the time they figure out the valuation is based on nothing, I will be untouchable." He was not just a cheater, he was a con artist, and he was confessing. I opened a new window. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I was not just a ghost. I was an executioner. I initiated a full download of the server's entire backup, every email on his desktop, which he had foolishly synced to the home network, every document, every call log from his VoIP phone, every single financial statement for the Thorn Catalyst Group. I watched the progress bar. He was handing me the gun, the bullets, an assigned confession. He thought he was erasing me. He had no idea I was the one about to wipe him from existence. I let the download finish. A silent, damning file transfer. Every gigabyte was another nail in his coffin. When the progress bar hit 100%, I ejected the virtual drive, closed the terminal, and shut the laptop. The screen went black, reflecting my own hollow-eyed expression. Then I turned to face my mother. She was still at the table, watching me. She had been watching me this whole time. "I heard you," I said. My voice was dangerously quiet. All the hysteria, all the tears, were gone. There was only this flat, dead calm. "I heard you on his call, with his lawyer. You helped him. You confirmed my schedule at the spa." Margaret did not flinch. She did not look guilty. She simply took a slow sip of her now lukewarm tea. "I told you, Eliza. I care about the outcome." "Shh, the outcome." I slammed my hand on the table, the old wood vibrating, the teacups rattling in their saucers. "The outcome is you destroyed your daughter. You sided with him. You helped him steal my home and my life." "Lower your voice," she commanded, her tone cutting through my rage. "You are thinking like a victim. I raised you to be a strategist." "What strategy? Mom betrayal. You are just like him." "I am nothing like him," she snapped, and for the first time, I saw a flash of fire in her cold eyes. "Julian is an amateur. Eliza, he is brilliant at conning people who trust him, who love him, but he is lazy. He is arrogant. He is utterly, hopelessly sloppy with his research." She stood and walked to the old desk in the corner. From a locked drawer, she retrieved an ancient, dark leather folder, the kind that cracks when you open it. She placed it on the table between us. "He thinks he won a $10 million house," she said, her fingers resting on the cover. "He does not even know what he stole." She opened it. Inside were not modern legal documents, but old, yellowed pages, heavy with script and wax seals. It was the original land grant for the Mountain Crest property. You did not build your house with Julian's money. Eliza, you know that. You built it on the land my mother left for you. Your grandmother. I know, I said, my voice thick with impatience. Julian said we needed to protect it. He had me move the land deed into a joint trust, for asset protection. That is how he was able to— He convinced you, Margaret interrupted, to fold your inheritance into his new money shell game. I told you not to. And I thought you were just being controlling. I shot back. So what it is in the trust. He forged my name. He took it. Margaret slid a single, brittle page across the table. Her finger, with its perfectly manisiled nail, tapped a specific paragraph of dense, faded text. A clause from 1920. Your grandmother, Margaret said, her voice dropping, was smarter than both of us. She distrusted new husbands and fast talkers. Read this. I read the words. They were archaic, full of wherefores and herebys. But the meaning was clear. It was an inheritance clause, a failsafe. It stipulates, Margaret translated, though I had already understood, that if the title to this parcel of land is ever transferred, sold, or otherwise encumbered without the express, physical, and written consent of two living direct line heirs, the transfer is rendered void, and ownership immediately and irrevocably reverts to the eldest living heir. My breath caught. 2 heirs, I whispered, looking up at her. Me and you. But Julian forged my signature, I said, my mind racing, trying to put the pieces together. The DocuSign. It is legal. It is verified. He forged your signature, Margaret said, that cold, calculating smile returning. He did not even know he needed mine. He never read this. He only read the modern deed from when you put it in the trust. He was in such a hurry to erase you. He did not do his homework. She leaned in, her eyes sharp as glass. He forged your name on a digital document to steal a house, thinking I was on his side. But I was never on his side. Eliza, I was just waiting for him to commit a crime that could not be undone. I never signed anything. I was waiting for him to hang himself. It all clicked into place. My mother was not my enemy. She was a ruthless queen on a chessboard I hadn't even known I was playing. Her betrayal confirming my spa trip was the bait. She needed Julian to be overconfident, to believe I was neutralized and that she was his ally. She had given him just enough rope, and he had gleefully used it to build his own gallows. But knowing I had the legal kill shot wasn't enough. The clause from 1920 would win me the house. Eventually. I didn't want eventually. I wanted tomorrow. I wanted to burn his entire life to the ground, just as he had tried to do to mine. To do that, I needed more than a land grant. I needed leverage inside that wedding. I needed an ally. I opened the downloaded files. The Thorn Catalyst Group folder was a digital sewer of fraud, and right at the top of the list of screwed-over investors was a name I knew well, Marcus Cole. Marcus had been Julian's original partner, the one with the actual vision before Julian bought him out a year ago. The buyout, as Julian had explained it to me, was amicable, but the files I was looking at told a different story. Julian hadn't bought him out. He had systematically diluted Marcus's shares, faked a capital call, and then declared Marcus's entire investment lost in a failed funding round. A round that, according to these records, was never meant to succeed. Julian had simply rerouted the money. Marcus had been bled dry to the tune of millions. My fingers found his number. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice wary and cold. Eliza, I have to say, you have a hell of a nerve calling me. Hello? Marcus, I assume you thought I was sipping your money on an island somewhere with Julian. The thought crossed my mind, he said dryly. So, what is this calling to gloat, or did you two finally run out of other people's money to spend? I am sending you an audio file. Marcus, it's 15 seconds long. I suggest you listen to it. I found the clip from Julian's call to Serafina earlier that day. I trimmed it, attached it, and sent it. I did not have to wait long. The clip was Julian's voice, clear as a bell, bragging. Taught Marcus a lesson about loyalty. The fool never even knew what hit him. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, charged with a new, dangerous energy. "What is this?" Marcus's voice was different. All the weariness was gone, replaced by a low, controlled fury. "That," I said, "is Julian, this afternoon, in my house, preparing for his wedding tomorrow to his mistress. The same house he just stole from me by forging my signature while he had me detained at a spa. The same house where he is currently planning to celebrate his new life, funded by your lost millions." Another beat of silence. Then, simply, "What do you want?" "Eliza." "I want you at that wedding. You are probably still on the guest list. Julian is too arrogant to have removed you. I want you in the front row, and I want you to bring a gift. I am not in the mood for... I am sending you a secure link right now. Marcus. It's a full data dump. Every file, every bank transfer, every email from the Thorn Catalyst Group. It's the failed funding round. It's the real wire transfers to the Cayman accounts. It's everything you needed to prove your case and never could. That's your gift." I hit send. I heard a soft ding on his end. I heard the click of a mouse. I heard him suck in a sharp breath. "My God," he whispered. He documented everything." "He is an amateur," I said, echoing my mother's words. "He is sloppy. So, will you be there, Marcus?" "I'll be there," he said. The fury was now a sharp, weaponized point. "My lawyers are getting this link right now. So is the SEC. So is the FBI. You just handed me his head on a platter. Eliza." "He's not just yours, Marcus. He's mine, too." I get the first cut. I hung up. The first piece was in place. Now for the second. I looked up the name of a senior financial reporter at the Denver Post, one known for her tenacity in sniffing out corporate fraud. She had been circling the Thorn Catalyst Group for months, but Julian's lawyers had always kept her at bay with threats of defamation. I called her anonymous tip line. I fed her the same information. I gave her the time, the place, and a little taste of the investor fraud. I told her that if she wanted the full story on Julian Thorne's spectacular implosion, she should be at 1284 Mountain Crest tomorrow at noon. The plan was set. My mother and her lawyers would handle the legal strike, the grenade that would reclaim the property. Marcus would be the surgical strike from within, the criminal and business front, and the press would be there to make sure everyone saw the blood. My attack, his attack, a pincer movement, and Julian was standing right in the kill zone. I slept for 2 hours in my childhood bed, a deep, dreamless void. When I woke, it was 5 a.m. on the wedding day. The house was silent. I showered, the hot water scalding away the last of the victim and leaving the strategist my mother had demanded. I did not pack a suitcase. I had nothing to pack. I put on the only thing I had in my mother's closet that was not 20 years old, a white, razor-sharp power suit I had left there last Christmas. My mother was already waiting downstairs, dressed in a severe, elegant navy blue dress. She held 2 cups of black coffee. She handed one to me. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Let's go," I replied. We arrived at her lawyer's downtown office at 8:55 a.m. The firm was old, the kind of place with dark wood paneling and attorneys who still wore 3-piece suits. Margaret's lawyer, a man named Strickland, had clearly been briefed. He had a stack of papers waiting. "Good morning, Margaret, Ms. Vance," he said, not wasting a second. "The emergency motion is ready. We are filing it based on the fraudulent transfer and the clear violation of the 1920 land grant covenant." He looked at his watch. The courthouse opened at 9. "My associate is already at the courthouse. We are first on the emergency docket." At precisely 9:01 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Strickland's associate, filed. The next few minutes were the longest of my life. My mother sat perfectly still, her hands folded over her purse. I stared at the wood grain on the table, tracking the lines with my eyes, breathing slowly, accessing my own systems. On my laptop, I was already inside the house's network. I watched them. I watched the guests arriving, laughing, holding gifts. I watched the catering staff chilling hundreds of bottles of champagne. I watched Serafina, in a white robe, getting her makeup done in my master bedroom. I watched Julian, in his tuxedo, pacing in his study, looking at his watch, not with love, but with the impatience of a man about to close a deal. At 9:15 a.m., Strickland's desk phone rang. He picked it up, listened for a moment, and said, "Thank you." He hung up and looked at us. A small, professional smile touched his lips. "The judge has signed the order. The quitclaim deed is void, effective immediately. Ownership of 1284 Mountain Crest has reverted to the eldest living heir, Margaret Vance." A wave of relief so strong it almost made me dizzy washed over me. I looked at my mother. She had not moved. Strickland slid a second, much simpler document across the table. "And this," he said, "is the transfer of title from you to your daughter, as requested." At 9:16 a.m., my mother picked up the heavy pen and signed her name, transferring the $10 million estate back to me, to Eliza Vance, my maiden name. "I do not want it," Margaret said, her voice clipped, as she pushed the document toward me. "I just wanted to make sure he did not get it." I signed my name. I was the sole, legal, and ironclad owner of the property. "Now," I said, closing my laptop, "if you will excuse us, Mr. Strickland, we have a party to attend." In the car, I pulled my laptop back out. Julian's fatal mistake. He had changed the user passwords, but he had not changed the root access. And he certainly had not scrubbed me from the system that controlled his private security team. He had just added their names to my network. I found the file Event Security Thorn. I highlighted the entire group. With a single click, I revoked all their access credentials, the digital gate keys, the camera feeds, the alarm codes. They were now just 6 very large men in suits, standing blind on my property. Then I made a call. I did not call the police. I called the most expensive and effective private security firm in Denver. "This is Eliza Vance," I said, my voice crisp. "I am the owner of 1284 Mountain Crest. There is a large-scale trespassing event currently in progress at my home. I am on my way now. I need a full team to meet me there in 10 minutes and assist in escorting every single person off my property. Yes, I will hold." They put me on with their head of operations. "Ms. Vance, we have a team 5 minutes out," he said. "How will they access the grounds?" I smiled, my eyes on the winding mountain road. I opened the route controls for the front gate. "Do not worry," I said, hitting the override open command. "I will let them in." We did not park down the road. We drove right through the main gates, the gates I had left wide open, and up the sweeping driveway, the gravel crunching under the tires of my mother's sedan. The car came to a stop directly in front of the main entrance, blocking the circular drive. The party was in full swing. Through the massive, open-air living room, I could see the expansive back garden. It was packed. Hundreds of guests in their pastel finest were seated on delicate white chairs. A string quartet played something classical and optimistic. And there, at the end of a rose-petal-strewn aisle, under a 10-foot arch of imported peonies, stood Julian and Serafina. He was in a custom tuxedo. She was in a cloud of white lace. They were holding hands, gazing at the officiant, the very picture of stolen bliss. My mother and I stepped out of the car, me in my stark white suit, her in her dark navy armor. We did not speak. We walked through the front door, our heels clicking in sharp, angry unison on the limestone floor. We moved through the house, past the champagne towers and the confused-looking caterers, and emerged onto the garden terrace. A few guests in the back rows turned. They saw us. Two women who were clearly not part of the wedding party, and their polite smiles faltered. They began to murmur, but the music was loud, and the officiant was speaking, so the front rows remained oblivious. I started to walk. I did not walk around the perimeter. I stepped directly onto the white runner, onto the scattered rose petals. I walked down the center aisle. With every step, more heads turned. The whispers grew louder. The string quartet, seeing a woman in a business suit walking with grim purpose toward the altar, began to falter, the notes becoming uncertain. Julian had not seen me yet. His back was mostly to me, his attention on his bride. Serafina saw me first. Her eyes widened, her painted-on smile froze, her hand tightening on his. Julian turned, his expression one of pure annoyance. Who had dared to interrupt his perfect moment? His face, when he saw me, was a masterpiece. It cycled through a universe of emotions in less than 3 seconds. Annoyance, confusion, disbelief. And then, as he registered the look in my eyes, the cold, flat, lack of all emotion look, his face settled on a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. "Eliza," he hissed, his voice just loud enough to carry. I did not stop. I did not walk to him. I did not go for the bride. I walked right past them, past the stunned officiant, and stepped up to the small platform where the string quartet was now staring at me, their bows hovering in mid-air. I raised my hand, a simple, sharp gesture to the conductor. "Stop." The music died, not a fade-out, a sudden, screeching, ugly stop, as if a record had been ripped from a player. The silence that fell over the garden was absolute. It was heavy, wet, and total. Every single one of the 200 guests turned their heads to stare at me. Julian finally found his voice. It was a panicked shout. "Eliza, what the hell are you doing here? Get out, security. Get her out of here." His hired goons, the ones I had seen yesterday, started to move from the edges of the garden. They took 2 steps before realizing their keycards were dead and their earpieces were silent. They looked at each other, confused. I stepped to the officiant's podium and picked up the small silver microphone. I clicked it on. The soft pop echoed across the lawn, making several people jump. "They're on their way," I said into it. My voice was calm, amplified, and clear. It boomed across my garden. "On my orders." Julian's face went white. I looked out at the crowd, and I saw my mother. She had calmly walked to the front row, to the seat reserved for the groom's family, and had seated herself. She was sitting there, purse in her lap, watching. She met my eyes, and she smiled. She would, indeed, have a front row seat. I turned my attention back to the stunned audience. I turned it back to my husband and his mistress, who were frozen under their flower arch like a macabre wedding cake topper. "Welcome, everyone," I announced, my voice ringing with a new, sharp authority. "Thank you all for coming." I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting them hang on the precipice. "Welcome to my housewarming." "You are insane," Julian finally roared, the blood rushing to his face, his mask of charm disintegrating to reveal the feral animal beneath. He lunged toward the podium, his hands reaching for me, for the microphone. "This house is mine. I have the papers. I have the signed deed." I stepped back, a single, deliberate movement, holding the microphone just out of his grasp. His momentum sent him stumbling. "Shh, you have a digital forgery," I said, my voice ice-cold and amplified, cutting through his animal rage. "And what you failed to realize, Julian, in your sloppy, arrogant haste, is that you also violated an inheritance clause, a clause that is 100 years old. And he also violated federal securities law. Julian." The voice was not mine. It came from the third row. Marcus Cole stood up, his face pale but his eyes burning. He was looking straight at Julian, ignoring the gasps from the guests around him. "Marcus," Julian spun, his panic escalating. "Sit down. You are making a fool of yourself." "You are the fool, Julian," Marcus shot back, his voice shaking with a year's worth of suppressed fury. "You thought you could just steal my money, steal their money, and no one would ever know." "That is slander. It was a bad investment." "You have no proof," Julian screamed, frantically looking around for his security, who were still clustered uselessly at the edge of the terrace. "Proof," I said, drawing his attention back to me. "You know, Julian, I was so disappointed I was going to miss the romantic slideshow of your new life." I held up my phone. I tapped a single pre-programmed command I had written last night. The 3 massive 80-inch television screens mounted on the terrace walls, the ones intended to show a loving retrospective of J&S, flickered. The monogram vanished. In its place, the screens lit up in unison, displaying the contents of the Thorn Catalyst Group's internal server. It was not a slideshow, it was his ledger. "As the system administrator," I narrated to the horrified crowd, "I thought I would play something a little more accurate." The screens shifted. I put the emails up first, the ones between Julian and his lawyer, detailing the plan to dilute Marcus's shares. Then, the audio file I had captured, his own voice, boasting about the lesson in loyalty. Guests pulled out their phones. I saw a flash, then another. The woman in the back, the reporter from the Post, was not just taking pictures. She was filming, a small smile on her face. She was getting her story. "As you can all see," I continued, my voice dangerously calm, "Mr. Thorne has been busy. These are the bank statements from the lost investor capital. And here," I tapped my phone again, "are the corresponding wire transfers, the ones that moved those millions. Here." The screens changed to show a list of offshore accounts, names and numbers in the Cayman Islands. "Julian!" Serafina shrieked, her voice cracking. "Julian, make her stop!" But Julian was frozen, staring at the screens, his mouth open, a strangled gulping sound coming from his throat. And then, the final twist, one I had not even planned. Serafina, the bride, had gone white as her dress. She was not looking at me. She was not looking at the panicked guests. She was staring, transfixed, at the center screen. Her eyes were wide, her hand covering her mouth. She was staring at one specific account number, a long string of digits at the top of the Cayman list, one with a very recent, very large incoming transfer. "Serafina, baby." Julian's voice was a pathetic whine. "It is not what it looks like. It is a lie." She turned to him. She moved slowly, as if underwater. Her veil was caught on her earring. Her eyes were not filled with tears. They were not filled with sadness. They were filled with a pure, cold, reptilian hatred I knew well. I had been feeling it for 24 hours. "That's my account number," she whispered, the microphone picking up the sound. I froze. I looked from her to the screen and back. "What?" Julian's head snapped toward her. "That's my money! Julian!" she screamed, her voice tearing through the stunned silence. "You told me that was a protected escrow. You told me it was my seed money for the new fund, that you were just holding it." It hit me. It hit everyone. She was not just the mistress. She was one of them. She was an investor. I looked at the files on the screen again, and it clicked. He had been robbing her all along. He had used her money, her family money, probably to pay the lawyers to defraud Marcus, to cover his losses, and to set up this entire fraudulent second round. He had conned us both, using her checkbook to pay for my execution. Serafina did not faint. She did not collapse into a heap of white lace. She took one step back, her beautiful face contorted with a disgust that was almost primal. She looked at Julian, the man she was about to marry, as if he were something she had just scraped off her shoe. The first sound that cut through Serafina's devastated silence was not a guest whispering or a phone ringing. It was a siren, distant at first, then rapidly, aggressively closing in. As if summoned by the sound, a new force appeared, my new security team, a dozen professionals in black suits with clear earpieces, moved in through the front entrance in perfect, terrifying formation. They fanned out, their presence instantly shifting the atmosphere from a chaotic party to a controlled demolition. At the same time, 2 Denver police cruisers rolled up the driveway, their lights flashing, painting the white peonies in strobes of red and blue. Marcus must have made good on his call. Julian's head snapped toward the sound. He saw my security team, he saw the police, and he did what all cowards do. He ran. He did not run toward the front, which was now blocked. He bolted sideways, crashing through a row of decorative hedges, trying to make it to the side garden, to the woods beyond. He was surprisingly fast. But my team was faster. 2 of them intercepted him before he had made it 10 feet. It was not a struggle. It was a clean, efficient neutralization. They did not tackle him. They simply boxed him in. 2 men, each twice his size, grabbing his upper arms in unbreakable grips. He was marched, his expensive shoes digging uselessly at the turf, back toward the officers who were now walking onto the terrace. I stood on the podium, the microphone still in my hand, and watched. The garden had descended into pure chaos. Guests were scrambling, tripping over chairs, abandoning champagne flutes on the grass. They were a herd, spooked, desperate to get away from the scandal, to pretend they had not been there. The reporter, I noted, was not running. She was moving methodically, her camera documenting every second of Julian's humiliation. Out of the crowd of fleeing guests, a figure in white stumbled toward me. Serafina. Her veil was torn, her makeup was a disaster, but she was not crying. Her eyes were wide and frantic. She clutched the skirt of her ridiculous, expensive dress. She stopped at the foot of the podium, looking up at me, her enemy, as a last resort. I did not know, she stammered, her voice low and desperate. I swear to you, I did not know about the land, about the house being yours. Not really. I did not. I said nothing. I just watched her. But the money? She pressed on. I knew about that account. He told me it was a safe escrow, a holding account to protect my investment from market volatility. He said it was for us. The last word came out as a pathetic squeak. She was trying to build a bridge, to find an ally in me. She was trying to paint herself as just another victim. I looked down at this woman, the one who had been sleeping in my bed, drinking from my crystal, and planning a life on my stolen foundations. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, not even triumph. Just a vast, cold emptiness. He used you, I said, my voice flat, the microphone carrying it to the last few fleeing guests. Just like he used me. The difference is, I get my house back. I leaned forward, just slightly. You, I said, should call the SEC. If you are lucky, they will see you as a victim. If you are not, you are an accomplice. Get off my property. She flinched as if I had slapped her, her fantasy, her wedding, her entire future, all gone in one sentence. She turned and, gathering her massive skirt, stumbled away. The garden was almost empty now. The police had Julian in handcuffs. Marcus was standing with a detective, pointing at the screens, which were still displaying the Cayman account numbers. I clicked the microphone off. The silence was a relief. You did well? I turned. Margaret was standing beside me now, having walked up to the podium. She surveyed the wreckage, the overturned chairs, the weeping flower arrangements, the abandoned party as if she were inspecting a successful business transaction. The adrenaline began to drain, and the cold, hard question that had been sitting in my chest for 12 hours finally rose up. Why, I asked, my voice low and raw, no longer needing the microphone. Why did you let it get this far? You helped him. You were his accomplice. You confirmed my schedule. You gave him the opening. You could have warned me. You could have stopped this weeks ago. Margaret turned to look at me, her gaze as unflinching as ever. No, she said. I could not have. What do you mean, you could not? Because if I had just told you, she said, her voice sharp as steel, you would not have believed me. You would have thought I was being a jealous, controlling mother, just as you always have. You would have confronted him. He would have denied it, and you, Eliza, you would have forgiven him. He would have charmed you, and you would have chosen him over me. I opened my mouth to deny it, but I could not. The truth of it hung in the air, thick and ugly. I had to wait, she continued, turning back to watch the police put Julian in the car. I needed him to do more than just plan. I needed him to act. I needed him to commit an irrevocable, undeniable breach of contract, a crime. You had to see him for exactly who he is, not the man you thought he was. You had to be the one to burn him to the ground. The police car door slammed, a final hollow sound that echoed across the terrace. Julian was gone, the flashing lights painting red and blue streaks on the faces of the reporters who swarmed the retreating vehicle. I watched them go, my hands steady at my sides. Marcus was by the detective, his face grim but satisfied, a file already in his hand. The silence that fell afterward was heavier than the music had been. The sirens faded down the mountain, leaving only the sound of the wind rattling the abandoned champagne flutes. My garden. It was a battlefield of celebration, a sea of overturned white chairs and crushed, expensive flowers. The air smelled of spilled champagne and wilted peonies. It was the wreckage of a life he had planned, a party I had just finished. Margaret stepped up beside me. She, too, surveyed the scene, not with horror, but with a critical, appraising eye. She had not moved from her front row seat during the entire confrontation. She adjusted her dress. So, she said, her voice cutting through the quiet, what are you going to do with all these flowers? I looked at the mess, the sheer waste, the arrogance of it all. He had planned this, paid for it with stolen money, all to celebrate his victory over me. I stepped down from the podium, my heels clicking on the stone. I walked to a nearby table, where a guest had abandoned a full, untouched glass of champagne. The bubbles were still rising. I picked it up. I turned back to my mother, who was watching me with that same unreadable expression. I raised the glass in a toast. I think I'll keep them, I said. At least for tonight. I took a sip. It was crisp, cold, and perfect. The catering captain approached me then, his face pale, his hands twisting a napkin. Ma'am, Ms. Vance, we are not sure what to do. The payment. He was waiting to be paid by a man in handcuffs. You will be paid in full, I said, my voice sharp, leaving no room for negotiation. But you will take your new orders from me. I want your staff to clear every plate, every napkin, and every chair. I want this garden completely empty in 1 hour. Yes, ma'am, he stammered. But, I said, holding up my glass, you will leave the champagne, every bottle that is unopened, and all the clean glasses. Leave them. I left them to their work and walked back inside my house. I walked through the grand hall, my footsteps echoing on the limestone. I did not go to the master suite. I went to his office. The office where he had signed the fraudulent deed. The office where I had heard him confess his crimes. The heavy, masculine scent of his cologne still lingered in the air. I walked behind the massive, imposing desk. I sat down in his chair, the high-backed leather throne. It was comfortable. I leaned back, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the garden. My garden. My staff was cleaning up his mess. I opened my laptop, the one I had brought from my mother's. I logged into the root admin console. I typed one line of code. And then, from every speaker in the house, from the walls of the office, from the terrace, from the bedrooms, music began to play, not the gentle string quartet he had chosen. I had chosen this, the powerful, triumphant horns of Nina Simone. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life. For me. Her voice filled the empty house. And I'm feeling good. I picked up the sleek, heavy receiver of the desk phone. I made the first call. Not to a friend, not to a lawyer, to a liquidator. "Hello," I said, as the music swelled around me. "This is Eliza Vance. I have the full data packet for the Thorn Catalyst Group. It is time to begin freezing every last asset. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am dying to know where you are all listening from. Please drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. If you want more stories like this, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people."